तस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So I'm honored to be here in Lotus feet of Shindai Gaurichandra and seek the blessings of His Holiness Tirukkural Maharaj so that I can speak something today. So I'll speak on the topic of tapping our inner power. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about different levels of the inner hierarchy. In 3.42, he says, Indriyani paranyahur indriyebhya param manah manasistu para buddheyo buddhe paratastu saha. So he says, Indriyani paranyahur. So normally, we identify ourselves with the body. But above the body, driving the body, are the senses. The body will be situated at one place, but the eyes see something. I want to get that. And the body starts moving in that direction. So the body is moved by the senses. So in that sense, the senses are higher than the body. Then further above that is Indriya, Indriyani paranyahur indriyebhya param manaha. Above the senses is the mind. Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that actually even when we are sleeping, at that time our senses are inactive. But at that time, the mind is active, the mind is dreaming. So, in terms of the energy, in terms of the sheer energy that the mind possesses, its energy is much more than the energy of the senses. Even when the body is tired and it needs some rest, at that time, the mind continues to function. And manasastu para buddhe. And the mind is energetic, but what the mind can achieve, that is determined by the intelligence. So the intelligence actually channels the energy of the mind. It's like we may have so much wind flowing by in the sky, but if we have a wind wave, air wave, then that can tap it into energy. So just the flow of energy is not enough. There has to be some means by which to tap that energy. So Krishna says above this mind is the intelligence. And then he says lastly, Yo buddhe paratastu saha. Beyond buddhi is the saha. This being Krishna refers to the soul. So Krishna talks about 4 levels over here. The body, the senses, the mind, the intelligence and the soul. So there's 5 actually, but the body is something which is implicit. Within that functioning are the senses. So in this specifically Krishna talks about these 4 things. While talking about these 4 things, he stresses on the point that actually we can function at any of these levels. And which level we function at, that determines how productive we will be. So last year I had been invited to Cambridge University to give a talk on science and spirituality. So while returning back, we passed by the tree where supposedly Newton saw the fruit falling. It's not exactly that tree, it is a descendant of that tree. And that place is considered to be like a pilgrimage place for scientists. So that is the place where science started developing. So when I was going by there, it just struck me that millions of fruits have fallen throughout history. So what was so special about this fruit falling? If instead of Newton, at that time there would be the monkey sitting over there. The monkey would have just picked up the fruit, eaten it and gone on its way. Why speak of a monkey? Many human beings would have done the same thing. And in principle, there's nothing wrong in that. A fruit has fallen, eat the fruit. And nice fruits are delicious, they're natural, good food, eat it. You go on with it. Yes, you could have done that. But, we humans have two sides. We have an impulsive side and we have an intelligent side. The impulsive side is driven primarily towards bodily activities. So the bodily activities are the activities of eating, of sleeping, of mating, of defending. Now actually these activities are also needed for the functioning of the body. But when we act only at this level, we limit our potential. There is the necessity for living, and there is the purpose for living. What we live with and what we live for are two different things. So what we live with, yes, we all need food, we need shelter. These things we need, the biological necessities. But what we live with, if that becomes what we live for, if this itself becomes the purpose of life, then we severely limit our potential. So for example, if a student goes to university, say here we have University of Central Florida, University of Orlando. So a student goes to university. Now when the students are studying, naturally while they are living in the college, maybe in the hostels for 3, 4, 5 years, they need to eat food. And if they want to eat food, yes, nobody likes to eat unpalatable food. If you can get good food, fine. You can take good food and enjoy that. But the purpose of going to university is not to eat food. The student in the university spends all the time just searching for the best food to get. And in that process, spends all the years over there just looking for good food. That is a massive underutilization of the time in the university. Food, and good food also can be got anywhere actually. But the education that the university can offer, that is special. And with that education, the student can create such a bright career for oneself in the future. So similarly, the human form of life is actually considered for the soul a precious opportunity for education. And to use this form for simply the biological needs, the biological drives, this is a terrible, a tragic underutilization of the human form. Now, scientists and researchers have been trying to analyze what is the difference between humans and animals. Is there any difference actually? So basically the Western thought has gone towards two extremes with respect to the difference between humans and animals. So much of Western intellectual thought has come from Christianity. Actually it has come from Greek thought, much of which was influenced by Vedic Upanishadic thought. But in the modern times, the Greek thought was incorporated into Christian thought by St. Augustine first and then by Thomas Aquinas. In the Greek tradition, there were two main thinkers. There was Plato and there was Aristotle. So Augustine integrated Christian theology or biblical theology with Plato's ideas. That was in the 3rd century roughly, in the early dawn of Christianity, 3rd, 4th century. And then in the medieval times, 11th, 12th century, that Thomas Aquinas tried to integrate a thought of Plato's disciple, that was Aristotle, with Christian biblical theology. And what resulted was the idea that humans are special because humans alone have souls. This was an idea that Thomas Aquinas proposed. And his reasoning was that only humans have what he called the light of reason within them. They have a special endowment by which they can ultimately know God. So this is true, that we humans alone can know God. But from this point, he extrapolated that actually this means we humans alone have souls. And then what about the life that is there in other species? So they have different expressions for that. So one of the explanations that they give is animals have spirit but not soul. Now Srila Prabhupada avoided this confusion by using the word spirit soul. Spirit soul. So they have the idea that the spirit which animates them, but that spirit is of a different kind. So that spirit is something which lives and then it dies. It cannot know God. So humans alone can know God. And that this basically, so Christian theology put humanity on a special pedestal. And the whole remaining existence, all the flora and fauna, that just became a backdrop for the central drama of human redemption through Jesus. The lives of the birds and the animals, they serve no purpose except to just serve as a setting. So they will live, they will struggle fitfully, they will grow old and they will die, and that's the end of their existence. So this leads to what is called as anthropocentrism. Anthropocentrism is, anthropos is humanity, so a human-centered worldview. Now of course, in America people are very attached to their pets. So one of the popes was asked, what about my dog? If I go to heaven, what about my dog? So then he accommodated, he said, if a dog is faithful Christian, that dog will also go to heaven. So now, there's some sort of, you could say, pandering over there. But the idea was that only humans can know God, so only humans have souls. Then Darwin's theory of evolution came up. And Darwin proposed that all species have evolved from one species to second species, third species. Now the evidence talks about change. The problem with evolution theory in many ways is that the word evolution itself means many things. Evolution, if it's simply used to mean the word change, then change is a fact of life. And we see, Krishna also says in the Bhagavad, Adi bhutam ksharo bhavaha, that this material world is constantly changing. So yeah, a species will adapt to nature. Whatever circumstances they are, they will adapt to that. So if evolution has simply change, adaptation to nature, nobody is denying that. What else? Evolution as change that is observed everywhere. But evolution as change which can bring about all the species. What is the evidence that is available is for variation within species. Variation within species means that, okay, if one species is living at a particular place, but then the weather changes and it becomes the drought comes over there, water becomes scarce, and the species adapts itself. So that's evidence for variation within species. But then evolution is used for, evolution has this one meaning that, okay, it refers to change. Change in response to nature. But then from there it is extrapolated that means all change came because of natural selection, as called it. So we see variation within species, but from that the extrapolation is made about origin of species. And for this, strictly speaking, there is no evidence. Because we have not seen species evolving from one species to another. But evolution goes even further, and then evolution at third level becomes an all-explaining ideology. Everything that exists, that's because of evolution. So why are some people religious? Why are some people atheistic? Oh, evolution has programmed the brains of some people in a way that they believe in God. Evolution has programmed the brains of other people because they don't believe in God. So, now this has absolutely no evidence that our beliefs, first of all our beliefs, what are beliefs? How can we connect them with brain programming or brain, with the brain analysis? All that we can see is certain chemical states. And the chemical states have nothing to do, they are intrinsically not emotions. They are just bodily function that happen when something deeper experiences some emotions. So evolution is all explained ideology that is the denial of God. That is the evolution is not equal to that. Our topic is so. But so Darwin proposed that actually humans come from apes. That was an idea. But they found that they were intermediate species. There were intermediate species from which both apes and humans are. And that is still it. But there is no evidence. And there is no. But either way, the point was that there is no qualitative difference between humans and animals. Because both have come from the same ancestor. And so, whereas Christian theology, this is not directly in the Bible, this is the subsequent thoughts of one thing, that is only humans have souls. Darwin's theory of evolution implied that no one has souls. Because also one species evolved from other to other to other, and nobody has souls. So, these are the two broad ideas that have influenced Western mainstream thought. Now, the Vedic understanding is that the basic characteristic of the soul is consciousness. It is Chaitanya. Avinashi tu tadviddi yena sarvamidam tatam vinashamavyasyasya na kaschit kartum arhati. It says Avinashi tu tadviddi, that which pervades the whole body, that is indestructible. So Srila Prabhupada in that purport explains that what is that pervades the body? That is consciousness. I can feel anything that is touched on my body because there's consciousness over it. If something touches this table, I do not sense it because my consciousness is not there. So consciousness pervades the body. So the consciousness is the symptom of the soul. Baldev Vidyabhushan is one of the most prominent acharyas in our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. He has written a commentary on Vedanta Sutra called the Govinda Bhashya. And there he analyzes this relationship of the soul and consciousness. And the basic point is consciousness is the energy of the soul. Just like we have a light over here. And from that light, its energy, from that bulb, its energy is pervading the room. So Krishna also says this later in 13.34, Yatha prakashet yekah kritsnam lokamimam ravi kshetram kshetritha kritsnam prakasheti bharata. So he says, just as the sun situated at one place illumines the whole universe, similarly, the soul illumines the body with consciousness. So Baldev Vidyabhushan talks about the Jnana Rupa and Jnana Swarupa. So the soul itself is Jnana Swarupa. And the soul's consciousness which radiates outward, that is the Jnana Rupa. The consciousness radiates outwards. And the soul itself remains unchanging. But the extent of the radiation of the soul's consciousness outwards, that changes. So the soul is unchanging, but the soul, when it goes through different bodies, through different situations, different mentalities, the extent to which the consciousness radiates outwards, that changes. What does this mean? This means that the soul's consciousness is shaped by its bodily circumstances. So, whereas Christian thinkers postulated that actually the capacity to know God is a symptom of the soul. What the Bhagavad Gita and Bhakti tradition explains is that actually it is consciousness that is a symptom of the soul. Wherever there is consciousness, there is soul. So in animals are consciousness, germs are consciousness. But it is the capacity to know God that is the characteristic of the developed consciousness. And that developed consciousness capacity is present in human beings. It is not present in animals. So human beings are different from animals. But that difference is in degree. It is not in nature. It is not that animals don't have souls and humans have souls. It is all living beings have souls, but the degree of the development of the consciousness of the soul in human beings is much more than that in animals. And we see to a large extent that animals also have emotions. Those who have pets, they can see that actually they also have emotions. They have feelings like us, they have moods like us. So animals are also persons. So in that sense, they also are consciousness just like we have. So actually speaking, we as souls are present, we as souls go through various species. And at the lower species, we function more or less at the bodily or the sensory level. Just a couple of days ago was Ekadashi. Now if a cat sees a mouse on Ekadashi, the cat can't think, oh, today is Ekadashi, I have to fast. Why? Because it's driven by biological impulses. Now we are also driven by biological impulses. But we can regulate ourselves. Now it's not fasting necessary for Ekadashi. Some people want to fast because they just want to lose weight. Now how many animals can think, oh, I want to lose weight, I'll fast now. They can't think like that. Srila Prabhupada says in one lecture that a hog eats human excreta. And he says the hog delights in eating that. And what is the proof that it delights? Prabhupada, it's so fat. Prabhupada says that it eats this bulky. So what is happening? The animals also eat, they also get pleasure in eating. But they can't think of any doing higher for regulation. So we human beings, whether it is for a spiritual purpose, okay, I want to get purified, I want to go to closer to Krishna, so I want to fast. Or it can even be for material purposes. I want to look attractive, so I'll fast so that I lose weight. Whichever way it is, we have the capacity to regulate our impulses according to our intentions. In fact, if we consider, going back to the starting when I said about so when I spoke in the beginning about Newton observing the fruit falling, at that time also, what exactly happened is, instead of acting according to impulse, Newton acted according to intelligence. By impulse, he just grabbed the fruit and eaten it. By intelligence, he thought, okay, what made this fruit fall? And by thinking that way, he came up with the theory of gravity. And that started the whole engine of the train of modern science. Started by actually the use of intelligence to subordinate the impulse. So Albert Einstein said that the sciences, the arts and the religions all are fruits of the same tree of human consciousness. It is human beings who, when they act in the world of matter to explore and analyze the world of matter, that the sciences come up. When human beings act in the world of imagination, imagination not in the sense of fantasy, imagination in the sense of creativity, at that time the arts come up. And when humans act in the realm of that which transcends matter, the spiritual reality, that is when religion, philosophy, all these come. So actually, some people feel that science and spirituality, they are contradictory. If you are scientific, how can you be spiritual? Or if you are spiritual, then you are being unscientific. No, it's not. That's not like that. Science and spirituality basically is the same intelligence, but directed in different domains. When the intelligence is directed towards the exploration of matter, then that leads to the development of science. When the intelligence is directed towards the realm of spirit, that leads to the development of spirituality. Now, of course, when I said that when intelligence is used to analyze the realm of matter, that leads to science. That is true, but what also happens is the majority of the world is not really interested in the intelligence. They are interested simply in the impulses. So even the scientific progress, which is a result of the intelligence, is used for pandering to the impulse of people. So, for example, when I was studying engineering, I did my electronics and telecommunication engineering in India, in one of the top colleges there. So, in my 4th year, I started studying television engineering. And there, this was about 1990s, so there I read that the most extensive use of electronics engineering is to make TVs. That was a big anticlimax for me. I said, I've been studying engineering, I'm using my intelligence. See, for me, engineering was not just application, I was more in search of truth. I was trying to understand what is the nature of reality. I said, what is this? I am using my intelligence to make idiot boxes to make people into idiots. Is that what I really want to do with my intelligence? So of course, science is itself a product of intelligence. But the products of science are not used for intelligence. Science is a product of intelligence. So a computer, internet, mobiles, they all require intelligence to make. But how many people are actually using these products for something intelligent? Yes, people are using it for education, people are using it for intelligent purposes also. But comparatively speaking, most of scientific products and technology, they are used simply for pandering to impulses. Pandering to impulses, whether it is whatever. You want to eat, then there are so many advertisements that come up. People want to mate, whether it is dating or whether it is seeing obscene images or whatever. All this, if we see, science and technology are used for pandering to the impulses of people. When this happens, then we end up again on the platform of existence where the animals exist. The animals exist simply to pander to their impulses. And they use their intelligence also, but their intelligence is used to satisfy their impulses. So when say a tiger is to catch a prey, the tigers have a sense, okay, that deer is there and the wind is moving like this. So if I approach the prey from here, the deer will smell me coming. So the tiger will go all the way around and come from the other side. So when the smell comes, the deer won't get the smell, I can bounce on it. So now, the tiger, in its catching a prey, it is using its intelligence. But its intelligence is used primarily for satisfying its impulses. So if we human beings do the same thing, then we are living at the same animal level. And then, actually, we massively underutilize our potential. What is our potential? By nature, we are all pleasure seekers. We all want happiness. And we have the potential to find lasting happiness. We as soul, the soul is Sat Chit Ananda. Ananda is happiness. Ananda is a characteristic of the soul. So, as the characteristic of the soul, we are by nature meant to be joyful. But to the extent we identify with that which we are not, to that extent we lose our joyfulness. So the word Maya has many meanings. There is an etymological meaning and there is a philosophical meaning. Ma-ya. Ma means not. Ya means this. That which is not. So, to mistake something to be that which is not, that is Maya. Now, in philosophical sense, The word Maya is often translated as illusion. Now, if we go a little bit in psychology, there are two different terms which are used in common parlance in a similar way, but they are different. There is illusion and there is hallucination. So illusion means there is an external object, but it is perceived wrong. So for example, somebody sees a rope. There's a snake over here. So there is an object, but the object is perceived wrong. That is illusion. Hallucination means there is nothing. Somebody just lying over there. Somebody's come over there. A thief has come over there. There's nobody over there. So hallucination. So that means when there is perception, when there is stimulus, but the perception of that stimulus is wrong. That is illusion. When there is hallucination, there is perception without any stimulus at all. So the perception itself is a product of imagination. So when we use the word Maya, is it illusion or is it hallucination? Yeah, it is illusion. It is not hallucination. So what is the illusion? The objects in this world do exist. Yes. If there is a gulab jamun, it does taste good. If somebody looks attractive, they look attractive. That object, that object's beauty, that object's taste, that object's fragrance, whatever it is. We have these five sense objects. We have touched, we touch things, we taste things, we smell things, we see things, we taste things. So like that, we approach things in different ways, through our eyes, through our ears, through nose, through skin. So like that, the objects out there are attractive. So it's not a hallucination to say that something is attractive. But the illusion is to think that these objects will give me pleasure. Yes, they will give us pleasure, but the pleasure is very short-lived. It stays for a few moments and then after it just goes away. Because that pleasure is like a drop. Whereas what we are longing for is the ocean. And that ocean is found in Krishna. Yadyat vibhutim atsatvam shrimad urjitameva tattadeva avagachatvam avatejo amshasamva. Krishna says, whatever is attractive in this world, it reflects a spark of my splendor. So Krishna doesn't deny that there are attractive things in space. There are attractive things. But know that they are only sparks. This, if there's a cold night, a spark, what warmth can it give us? If there's a fire, blazing fire, it can give us some warmth. So like that, the objects of this world, they give us some pleasure, but it's little pleasure. Whereas when we connect with Krishna, we get lasting pleasure. So we human beings, by our developed consciousness, we can know God, we can love God. That means we can connect with Krishna. And by connecting with Krishna, we can relish lasting happiness. Whereas when we act according to our impulses, we are simply connecting with the sparks. Eat this, touch this, get this, enjoy this. So all this that our impulses push us towards, they are sparks. They will give us pleasure, but it is flickering pleasure. It doesn't last. And that is why when we act according to our impulses, we underutilize our potential. We deprive ourselves. But when we act according to our intelligence, then we fulfill our potential. We fulfill our potential means we can progress in a way that we can move towards lasting happiness. And I'll conclude with one point, and we can have question and answers. Many times, people often get, nowadays there is this whole atmosphere of moral relativism. Moral relativism means, if I feel something is right, then it is right. And nobody has a right to say, this is wrong or this is right. Everything I determine it. So morality, people feel, is self-determined. If I feel that something is right, then it's right. If you feel it is wrong, you don't do it. But don't impose your ideas on me. So when we get into this moral issue, of course, people may say, there is no absolute morality. But it doesn't work like that. Even people who are moral relativists, they also intuitively know that some things are wrong. If you ask a person who is a moral relativist, do you think that right now in this world there are some people who are doing things which they should not be doing? Yes, of course. There are terrorists who are killing innocent people. There are child abusers who are abusing people. There are so many terrible things. He says, then what are you doing? You are making a moral judgment. Isn't it? Isn't it? So, the moment we say that somebody is doing something which they should not be doing, that means they are making a moral judgment. And if you are making a moral judgment, that means you are not a moral relativist. So that means you are saying that it's not just a matter of feeling whether this is right or wrong, it is wrong. Whether they feel it right or wrong, no, it is wrong. So terrorists may be fully convinced that what they are doing is right. But it's not a matter of relativism, moral relativism, if they kill hundreds of innocent people. It's wrong. So we all intuitively accept that there is something right and there is something wrong. So nobody is an absolute moral relativist. Nobody at all. But when we get into moral issues, people can disagree. You think this is wrong, but I don't think it is wrong. So once you get into the issue of what is right and what is wrong, it can become a very indecisive or bitter discussion. It can sound very judgmental. No, you shouldn't do this because it is wrong. You shouldn't do this, you should do it because it is right. So when we get into this whole polarity of right and wrong, people often take it as being very judgmental. So instead, we can focus on what is wise and what is unwise. What is intelligent and what is unintelligent. And I started with the Gita verse, which talks about various levels at which we exist. The body, the senses, the mind, the intelligence, and the soul. So most of the animals, they act at the level of the senses. Whatever they desire, they pander to that. And if you consider the mind, although the mind is above the senses, normally the mind also functions according to the senses. That means the senses give us some stimulus and the mind imagines based on that. The mind imagines based on that. And Srila Prabhupada writes in one purport that when we enjoy the senses, when we enjoy the sense objects, most of the pleasure is actually in the anticipation. Because I'll eat this, it is so nice, I'll enjoy this, I'll enjoy this, I'll enjoy this. The mind is anticipating, the mind is imagining. And when we actually get there, the pleasure gets over so quickly. The pleasure doesn't. So quite often, the anticipation lasts, the imagination lasts much longer than the actual reality. So what happens is, the mind also functions more or less at the sensory level. The intelligence is above that. The intelligence can actually, so if there are the senses, there is the mind, there is the intelligence. The intelligence can go both ways. I discussed how science is a product of intelligence, but the products of science are not used for intelligence. They are being used for pandering to the impulses. So what happens is, the intelligence can also be used for pandering to the senses. So for example, people want to surf the internet and they don't want others to know which site they surf. So what they do is, they use their intelligence to surf in the private mode. So there's no history left over there. What is that? That is the use of intelligence. So Srila Prabhupada said in the lecture, we are meant to use our senses to control the enjoymentality. But we are habituated to enjoying intelligently. Enjoying intelligently. Actually, their enjoyment is not intelligent, it is unintelligent. But we are using our intelligence to enjoy. Why is it unintelligent then? Because it is flickering enjoyment, it's short-lived enjoyment. Not much enjoyment is there. So the intelligence can go down and be used to pander to the impulses. Or the intelligence can go up and be used to realize the soul and to relish happiness at the spiritual level. And that is what Krishna recommends in the next verse. This was what I quoted at the beginning was 3.42. 3.43 is Evam buddhe param buddha samsthabhyatmanam atmana yahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. It says Evam buddhe. In this way, with your intelligence, param buddha, know yourself to be transcendental, param, beyond this body. You are not material. samstabhyatmanam atmana. In this way, fix your consciousness on the spiritual level. And jahishatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasatam. In this way, Arjuna, conquer over the enemy of short-sighted desires, of impulsive desires. Krishna uses the word kama. Kama doesn't necessarily refer only to lust. Kama refers to any impulsive desire, any short-sighted desire. Krishna says, how do you conquer it? By using the intelligence to situate oneself at the spiritual level. So Srila Jiva Goswami, one of our prominent Acharya, he says that for the sadhaka and the siddha, for the siddha, when siddha means the perfected souls, those who are pure, they practice bhakti because of priti. They love Krishna. And that's why they naturally practice bhakti. But for the sadhakas, what keeps them in bhakti is their buddhi.
Is your what?
Buddhi. Their intelligence. Sadhakas, they don't feel always attracted to Krishna. Yes, we also have some devotion to Krishna, some priti is there. But our devotion is like a sine wave. Sometimes it is up there, and sometimes when it goes down, the sine wave becomes a sin wave. So they do all sorts of non-devotional, anti-devotional things. So if we just rely on our feelings, when I feel like chanting, I'll chant. When I feel like coming to the temple, I'll come. When I feel like studying the Bhagavad Gita, I'll study the Bhagavad Gita. Then what happens is, we won't be able to be consistent in our bhakti. And we won't get purified. We'll get purified, but again we'll do things which will make us impure. That's why the buddhi is important. So, evam buddhe param. So the intelligence, when we use our intelligence to situate ourselves in the spiritual platform, then Krishna says we can conquer over the impulsive desires and we can realize ourselves. Then we can relish lasting happiness. So the unique potential of us humans to be able to relish lasting happiness, that can be fulfilled when we use our intelligence to realize our transcendence. Use our intelligence to realize ourselves as spiritual beings, as parts of God, and we learn to love Him. That is how we can fulfill our potential. To summarize, I spoke today about how we can tap our inner power, how we can realize our potential. So there is Krishna talks about a hierarchy of being. Above the body is the, remember, senses. Above the senses, mind. Then intelligence. And ultimately, soul. And then we discussed how the animals function primarily at the level of the senses. So Newton, he could have acted by the impulse when he saw the fruit falling and just eaten the apple and just gone on his way. That's what animals would have done. That's what most human beings would have done. But science progressed. He was able to postulate the theory because he did not act on the impulse, he acted with the intelligence. What made this fruitful? So when we act according to our impulses, it's not always bad, but it is unwise. It is underutilization. Just like a student who goes to university has to eat, but the purpose of going to university is not eating. That would be underutilization. So like that, we have bodily needs which need to be fulfilled. But what is life's necessity is not life's purpose. Our bodily needs, our biological drives, they are our needs, but they are not the purpose of life. The purpose is to realize ourselves spiritually. And in that connection, this idea of spiritual realization, Krishna says that above is the soul. So then I talked about the two streams of thought about the soul in Western thought. Christianity, by mixing up biblical theology with Greek insights, they came up with the idea that only humans have souls, because humans alone have the capacity to know God. But then what about the rest of the animal world is just left to pointless existence, merely as a backdrop. And evolution, when Darwin proposed it, nobody has souls. Because all species just evolved one. The problem with evolution is that the word evolution is used with different meanings. One is change, the other is change within species, the one is change from one species to another species, origin of all species, and third is explanation for everything. So what evidence is there for only variation within species? So now evolution proposed that nobody has any souls. But the Vedic understanding is that actually all living beings have soul, because consciousness is the symptom of the soul. So, because animals also have consciousness, birds also have consciousness. They also have souls. What is the difference between humans and animals is the development of the consciousness. So, we have the capacity to know God because our consciousness is more developed. But animals also have consciousness. And with this developed consciousness, when we use it to know God, then we are actually using our intelligence constructively. Otherwise, we are underutilizing our intelligence. Just like science, it requires tremendous intelligence to develop science. But then if that all our intelligence is to pander to the senses, we use our intelligence to study engineering, and then we make idiot boxes by which people become idiots. What is the use? So it's underutilization. So science, religions and arts, they are actually the same human being progressing. When we subordinate our impulses to our intelligence and explore the world of matter, that leads to science. When we explore the world of creativity, that leads to art. And we explore the world of spirit, that leads to religion, philosophy, spirituality in general. And discuss about how the sciences today, or the product of intelligence, if it is mostly used for pandering to the senses, then we stay caught at the lower level of reality. But when we practice bhakti, we are using our intelligence to connect with higher reality. What is that higher reality? The reality of who we are and whose we are. We are at our core souls. As souls, we are parts of God, and in loving Him, we can get lasting happiness. So I discussed about Maya. Maya is not hallucination, it is illusion. The world has many objects which are attractive. So the illusion is not that they are attractive, the illusion is the thing that they are so attractive that they will give me lasting happiness. No, they will only give flickering happiness. They are like sparks. Krishna is like the full flame. So when we practice bhakti, we use our intelligence so that rather than as per our impulses we get attracted to the worldly objects, instead we direct our attraction towards Krishna. And by that process for directing our attraction from the world of Krishna is bhakti yoga. And in bhakti yoga, the pure devotees, those who are already purified, they will be motivated by priti. They already have affection for Krishna. We will have to motivate ourselves by our intelligence. So to the extent we use our intelligence to understand, okay, this is impulsive, I will not do it. This is intelligent, I will do it. Then we can grow in our bhakti. And I concluded that once we get into the issue, this is right, this is wrong, then moral relativists, they just go on a campaign against it. You are imposing your moral standards on us. Now, actually, nobody can be a moral relativist. As I said, there are some things which everybody agrees they are wrong. So in that sense, although nobody is a moral relativist, but once we get into the zone of what is moral and immoral, what is right and wrong, people become very defensive. So instead, we can focus on what is wise and what is unwise, what is intelligent and what is unintelligent. So, if we analyze from the philosophical perspective, acting according to our impulses is unintelligent. And subordinate our impulses for a higher purpose, that is intelligent. And the highest purpose for which we can subordinate our impulses and direct our intelligence, that is realizing ourselves spiritually. So, instead of letting the intelligence pander to the mind and senses, we use the intelligence to realize the soul and relish the soul's loving relationship with Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Any comments, questions?
So one example I was thinking from, thank you very much for your wonderful class. So one example of there being no moral relativists in the world is everyone has to stop at a red signal, because not doing it will result in a fine. So no one can agree, no one can disagree, that is something that, I will do, and, no one can stop me from just jumping a signal. So I was just thinking about that. But one question I had about intelligence, and you said, so you gave the example of using intelligence to pander to biological impulses, and then using intelligence to try to transcend the basically the bodily platform, the living on the basis of bodily platform. So what is intelligence actually? Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that from me comes remembrance, knowledge and forgetfulness. I am the intelligence of the intelligent. So is intelligence a function of the super soul or of our free will, or is it a function of the consciousness? Like, I'm not very clear with my question, I know,
Okay,
but I'm just trying to understand, because we can use it, as you said, like we can very intelligently try to enjoy matter. At the same time, we can try to transcend. And you mentioned that, you know, our best bet is to use our intelligence to seek the higher pleasure, or like the higher platform of spirituality.
So what exactly is the intelligence, you know? It said it's come from Krishna. So is it a gift of Krishna, or is it a use of our free will? So how can we understand what the intelligence is so that we can use it properly? Otherwise people can use the intelligence also very improperly. Yeah. See, we can look at the intelligence in two ways. One is that it is a faculty that we have. And second is that it is a gift that is given by God. I'll reconcile both. Let's look at first the faculty we have. Just like, say, we have some muscles. Now, just by being born and having a body, we have some energy level with us. We can lift up certain weights. But if we go and do workouts regularly, we exercise, then those muscles become stronger. And when the muscles are stronger, they can lift bigger weights. So we can say at one level, the intelligence is like a faculty which we have. So this is a faculty which enables us to differentiate between the short term and the long term, between, say, the immediate and the ultimate, between the philosophical perspective, between the material and the spiritual. Basically, intelligence is the discerning faculty. That discerning faculty is something which we human beings have been given, by which we can prepare, we can foresee the future, and we can prepare for the future. So this is a gift which we have. All of us have this. And depending on how much we use it, it will, just like how much we exercise our muscles, the muscles will grow. Like that, how much we use our intelligence, depending on that, it will develop. So this is, I could say, the intelligence as a faculty which exists independent of its purpose. It is simply dependent on its use. See, purpose means why it is being used. Use means simply it is being used. So, you know, somebody can can exercise their muscles and become a big bodybuilder, and then they become a thug. They become others. So, or somebody can build their muscles, and they can use it for law protection, for protection of others. Law, for the purposes of law. Both ways is possible. But muscles are muscles. If you have them, that makes you strong. So like that, intelligence is intelligence, whether it is used for godly purposes or ungodly purposes. So, and this intelligence can be developed. So there are different kinds of intelligence. Some people have musical intelligence, some people have linguistic intelligence, some people have logical intelligence. There can be different kinds of intelligences also. And depending on how people develop them, they will become strong in that field. So, intelligence in this understanding is a tool, whichever way we use it. But there's a difference between intelligence and muscles. Because whereas muscles are simply tools which we can use for various purposes, and intelligence is also a tool. But intelligence is a tool which is categorically different, because it is a tool that also guides us about how to use various tools. My muscles don't guide me what to do. But my intelligence is a tool and also guides me what I should do, what I should not. One of the faculty, or one of the aspects of intelligence, or the central aspect of intelligence, we could say, is deciding what to do, what not to do. That's not the only aspect, but that is also an important aspect. So, from the spiritual perspective, the decision-making capacity in terms of what is short-term, what is long-term, that is what is the most important aspect of intelligence. So, The Bhagavatam often talks about how somebody might be a Brahmana, but that person may not be a devotee. And compared to that, somebody may be low-born, but that person, they are devotees. Viprad Vishadagunavitad Aravindanabha Padaravinda Vimukha Shupachambarishtam Manyeta Darpita Manovachine Hitartha Pranam Punati Sakulam Natu Bhurimana. Prahlad Maharaj is praised to Nrsimhadev in 7.9.13 says that actually, that my Lord, if a Brahmana is proud of one's intelligence and is not devoted to you, then that Brahmana cannot deliver oneself. On the other hand, if there is a low-born person, if that person is devoted to you, then what to speak of oneself, that person will deliver one's whole dynasty. So, here there are two different points. There is, we could say, the content and then the consequence. In terms of content, the Brahmana has intelligence. And this also is called about Viprad Vishadagunavitad Aravinda. They build qualities of a Brahmana. They have the rhythm and motion. On the other hand, somebody doesn't have that content in terms of intelligence. But because they are devoted to Krishna, supreme auspicious. This is that there is guides us, there is aspect of intelligence which guides us what guides. How we use everything else. That is the discerning capacity of the intelligence. And that is primarily developed by sadhana, by swadhyaya sadhana. So I talk about different intelligences, musical intelligence, logical intelligence, linguistic intelligence. From this perspective, there are these two things. There is discerning or discrimination, and there is determination. Discrimination is the capacity to understand what is right and what is wrong. And determination is the capacity to do what is right and to avoid that which is wrong. So these are the faculties of the intelligence that are the most important for spiritual growth. In fact, actually they are important for growth in any field. Even if somebody wants to become a champion athlete, they also have to be determined to keep training, keep practicing wisely. But let's focus on spiritual growth right now. So, tasmat shastram pramanam de karya karyavastito jnatva shastra dhanoktam karma kartum iharasi. Therefore, Krishna says, with your intelligence, so scripture, know what is to be done and what is not to be done, act accordingly. So, scripture practically guides us in terms of discrimination. Swadhyaya will lead to our discrimination faculty increasing. So discrimination is called as viveka in Sanskrit. Viveka buddhi. Viveka is discrimination. And then there is dhruti. Dhruti is determination. Determination is what is developed by sadhana. When you actually chant, when you associate with devotees, when you connect with Krishna through purifying activities, then our determination becomes stronger. Yes, I want to do it, I will do it. So it is not necessary that, say, a person who is not very linguistically intelligent, just by practicing bhakti, they will become very linguistically intelligent. By linguistically intelligence, I would say that, say, the capacity to memorize verses. Verses deal with words. For some people are just brilliant at that. And some people, for them, memorizing verses causes them so much tension. I can't do this. Now, yes, we all, as I said, they are like muscles. Everybody can improve their muscles by some workout. But, we also have some innate muscles, and it's not that everybody can become a big bodybuilder just by exercise. The body also has some amount of limitations to it. So it's not necessary that by the practice of bhakti, our linguistic intelligence will improve, or our musical intelligence will improve. Not necessary. Or our artistic intelligence will improve. But by the practice of bhakti, our discerning intelligence, the discrimination and determination, that will definitely improve. So, and now this is what Krishna says, I will give you that. So when Krishna says buddhi buddhimatam asmi, he's talking about in two different contexts. One is, whenever we see an intelligent person, I'm actually very impressed. Somebody can say, multiply 13-digit numbers in their head and do the product. Brilliant! So you should understand. In India there was a mathematical genius, Shakuntala Devi, she could do like this. Just, the calculator will take more time than her. And then the calculator will type how you make an answer. She take okay, simple this is sum, I carry over, nothing. These two numbers are given to her and the answer comes from within from her. That's what she said, I just get the answer. So how is that coming? That is, Krishna is giving that intelligence ultimately. So just like some people have good memory capacity, some people have good mathematical capacity. So when we see somebody who has a lot of intelligence, we get attracted by that. What you see is that their intelligence is coming from Krishna. If this person is so intelligent, how intelligent Krishna is. So I can respect that person for their intelligence, but I focus on Krishna. So when Krishna says, I am the intelligence of intelligent people, that is meant to help us redirect our attraction from those intelligent people towards Krishna. Now that is one kind of connection between Krishna and intelligence. That intelligence is a gift given by Krishna to them. But it can be, rather than getting attracted to them alone, we can get attracted to Krishna. The other is the decision-making faculty. Krishna says, Tesham satam yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam. Tadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. So Krishna uses buddhi. In 10.10 he says, if you practice bhakti, then I will give you the intelligence by which you can come to me. So buddhi yoga is a compound word. Now, there are different kinds of yoga. There is karma yoga, jnana yoga, there is ashtanga yoga, there is bhakti yoga. There is no particular process called buddhi yoga, distinctly. What does buddhi yoga means? It means two things, compound words. It is the buddhi that enables us to do yoga. It is the buddhi that enables us to do yoga. Yoga means connection, connecting with God, ultimately connecting with supreme spiritual reality. So the intelligence that enables us to connect with supreme spiritual reality, that is buddhi yoga. So the buddhi that enables us to do yoga, that is buddhi yoga. Another meaning of buddhi yoga also, if you take the second word as beginning, the yoga that leads to buddhi. That will refer to bhakti yoga. So Prabhupada uses that second meaning whenever he translates buddhi yoga as bhakti yoga. The yoga, bhakti yoga is the yoga by which Krishna uses intelligence and we move closer to him. So for us, as sadhakas, we can try to exercise and develop our various intellectual faculties, whatever we have. We can try to become more musical, we can try to memorize more verses, all those things we can try. And by practice we can improve a little bit. But what is most important, what is Krishna's mercy is this decision-making faculty. Now, as we keep practicing bhakti, right now say we are struggling against our attachments. Say no to something and then again the temptation comes and we fall for it. Again we say no, again the temptation comes and we fall for it. This is a struggle through which we will go through at present. We may go through for a long time. But at one particular point, Krishna will give us that realization. This is not enjoyable. Why am I doing this? It's simply causing me suffering. Why do I need to do this? Just let me give it. So that clear insight which comes, which makes the decision so clear for us, that is Krishna's mercy. So that will come over. That is purification, that is realization. That will also come. So to summarize, I give a long answer. Say intelligence is a faculty which we have, which we can develop by practice, just like muscles are developed by practice. But intelligence is a distinctive faculty because it is a faculty that guides us to use all other faculties, including intelligence itself. So the intelligence is a faculty in terms of processing matter, whether it is music or words or places. Like some people have very good geographical intelligence. They're driving, just go one place, they remember. Some people they go 10 times and they didn't come here before. So this sort of so intelligence and the capacity to process matter, that may not change drastically for people, even if they practice. But intelligence as a faculty of understanding what is the purpose of processing matter and what is the purpose of living itself. That intelligence is developed by bhakti. So whatever I have, for what I use, that intelligence is developed by the practice of bhakti, by which we can make right decisions. And thus we can move closer to Krishna. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Discerning faculty.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
I think I have a question which is kind of in the same line of thought. My question is, how
do we make sure that while practicing bhakti, when we're trying to develop, our intelligence or refine our intelligence, purify our intelligence, how do we remain simple? Because sometimes it so happens that, while practicing bhakti, we tend to become too much calculative, too much over smart, I would say, and which kind of becomes an obstacle on the path of bhakti. Because, how to remain simple while practicing.
So, how can we remain simple while practicing bhakti intelligently? Because intelligence makes us to calculate our own. There is simple-mindedness and there is simple-heartedness. Simple-heartedness means we have simply one purpose. We don't have any ulterior motives. Our purpose is to move to Krishna. Our purpose is to serve Krishna more. So simple-heartedness is what it means. So it's not that, I am practicing bhakti and we all have other motives, but we don't nourish those motives. I'm not practicing bhakti so that I'll become famous, that people will respect me, how clever I am, how religious I am, how this I am. Those motives will be there, but when they come, we beat them down. We don't nourish them consciously. So we need to be simple. In terms of Krishna is our purpose. A simple-mindedness means, actually it's like a simpleton. A person who cannot analyze things very deeply. A person who just naively believes anyone and everyone. So as bhaktas, we want to be simple-minded. We have to be simple-hearted. Now, as far as practicing bhakti intelligently and becoming over smart or too calculative is concerned, calculation is not bad. Krishna also says, you say, when he talks about surrender, not Krishna, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Padma Purana, when they talk about surrender, what they say, Anukulyasya Sankalpa Pratikulyasya Parachana. That which is favorable I accept, that is unfavorable I avoid. Now that means I have to discern, isn't it? What is favorable, what is unfavorable. And that requires some amount of calculation. The word calculative is usually used in negative sense. But again we can go back to the word discerning. So what is favorable or unfavorable, I have to consider that. And there's nothing wrong in that. So if I have limited time for practicing bhakti, then if I spend that time chit-chatting with a devotee who is known to just gossip about various things, I may say I'm in devotee association, but I'm not associating spiritually with it. Then I may say, okay, I'll just offer respect to that devotee and I'll associate somebody else who inspires me in my practice of bhakti. This is not being calculated. This is just being purposeful. My purpose in coming to a temple is not just to gossip about who's doing what. That I could do in the material world also. If I'm coming to a temple, that is to go closer to Krishna. So being purposeful in that sense of what serves our purpose, that is actually essential for the practice of bhakti. So calculative is a negative word for it, but a positive word is more of discerning. Now we could become calculative even in the practice of bhakti in terms of fulfilling our own agendas in bhakti. This person is in a position of power. So if I please them, then they can do a lot of things for me. This person is insignificant. The devotee, but we consider insignificant. I don't pay any attention to them. If we start doing like that, then our purpose itself has changed. Our purpose has become more get position, get power or whatever. And if the calculation is done for that purpose, then that will be unhealthy for our bhakti. But if we are doing analysis or discerning for the purpose of what is favorable for our bhakti, then that is desirable. In fact, that is essential. So, over smart can also mean in a philosophical sense. That if whenever we hear the philosophy, we start asking questions, we start doubting, we start becoming critical. So, that can become a problem because in any field, we grow gradually. It's not that when a student starts studying physics first day, all the questions about physics are answered. One has to have faith. Okay, this teacher, he or she has taught for a long time and they know the subject. It's that not all questions can be answered in the first place. We have to have some faith. So, it is said in the spiritual path, the intelligence should be our minister, not our master. Minister is one who gives the advice. Master is one who tells us, do this, don't do this. So our intelligence, we should definitely be taking guidance from the intelligence. But just because, or rather than intelligence, we could use the word reason or logic. It's one aspect of intelligence. So everything in bhakti may not, all the aspects of the philosophy may not be immediately understood in terms of logic. Because Krishna is transcendent to everything, that means he's transcendent to logic also. Jiva Goswami says that if he talks about achintatva of Krishna, achintatva is inconceivability, and he says that if the absolute truth is truly absolute, if the supreme is truly supreme, then that means he should be superior to our intelligence. And therefore, we will not be able to understand him fully with our intelligence. Sometimes we may find some aspects of the philosophy which we don't understand immediately. So it's not that because I don't understand this, so I just not move forward. I will not practice bhakti. Unless you answer this question, no, I will not. No, we have to use our intelligence. Okay, I don't understand. How important is it really? I can ask somebody else. Maybe I'll find out later. And we move onward in our bhakti. So if we let our intelligence get us stuck in any one place and over one particular issue and don't move forwards, then we will not, then also our intelligence will do disservice to us. So being simple-hearted means, say for example, studying the Bhagavatam. The purpose of the Bhagavatam is to help Parikshit Maharaj remember Krishna. It's also to help us remember Krishna. If I come to the fifth canto cosmology in the Bhagavad, it doesn't make sense to me. How do I understand this? Well, there are devotees who have written books about reconciling fifth canto cosmology with modern scientific cosmology. If you really have interest, you can study that. But you don't have to become obsessive about that. This is just some pre-scientific mythology. I don't believe in this. I don't believe in this Bhagavad. You reject it. Not like that. You have to understand this is just this is what helped Parikshit Maharaj to remember Krishna at that time. Now, if it is helping me to remember Krishna, I'll study it deeply. If it is not, I'll be respectful. But I don't understand it, and I don't have the time or the energy to try to understand this right. Let me keep moving forward in Bhagavatam, and let me come to the heart of the Bhagavatam. That is the remembrance of Krishna. So that way, intelligence, we can be purposeful in making sure that we keep moving towards Krishna. So, if we use our intelligence to discern what is right and what is good for our bhakti and what is not so good for our bhakti, then that intelligence will never obstruct us in our bhakti. That won't make us over smart. But if we let the intelligence alone decide everything that we are going to do, including whether to practice bhakti or not, then that can lead to problems. Okay? Thank you. Any other questions? Do we have time? Yes, please.
I'm sorry I didn't hear your presentation for your Gita. Maybe I missed something. One thing I wanted to ask you about is, we try to have proper understanding, and use our intelligence and make the best choices, or like you are saying that to use our discrimination, what is the best for us. But I think there is another aspect which is very important, which we need to stress, which is not only what we understand what is the best for us from spiritual growth, but also where we are situated, on where we are, what are our needs, and the physical. Because we know from the scriptures, like for example, for the men, we should live in the temple as a brahmacharis and completely forget about women and being involved with the material world, mixing with material energy, because our intelligence are telling us that this is the best place, being like brahmachari, serving all day long, worshipping the deities, chanting the holy name, doing simple service. That's the best for us. But we can see that not everyone can do it. Our intelligence can tell us, yes, this is the best option for us, but still our capacity is not there. So if you could explain a little bit how to find the proper balance, or how to use our intelligence to not to get to the point where we are getting too fanatical about ourselves, because we can, when we get to the stage, we can also run our family life and everything, So if you could say something about this, I would appreciate.
So the question is that, say, with our intelligence we may understand that certain thing is the best thing to do, But when we are not able to do it, then we may thwart ourselves, frustrate ourselves by that. So how can we be intelligent at the same time, be practical, be not fanatical, be realistic? See, actually, in the Uddhava Gita, Krishna says, Sve Sve Dikare Yanishtha. Basically, the verse says that, so the Uddhava is asking many questions to Krishna. And one of the questions he asks is, what is dharma? So he says, there the answer he gives is, dharma is determined by one's adhikar. Adhikar means authority or level. Sve Sve Adhikare Yanishtha. So one's faith is based on one's adhikar. And then Krishna talks about how there is karma yoga for some people, there is jnana yoga for some people, there is bhakti yoga. So it's, in the Uddhava Gita is quite clear that the bhakti yoga is the best. But Krishna also says, if you cannot practice bhakti yoga, practice some other yoga. Practice some other yoga, just stay connected to the path of transcendence. So, as far as, say, living in a particular ashram, choosing an ashram is concerned, we have to be intelligent. Anything else. It's like anything. If I'm eating food, how much should I eat? I may somebody else eat very less. But if I start eating then I feel that I'm constantly starving. And they may eat a little food and they go on with their life. I eat a little food and throughout the day I'm thinking of food. What is the use? So I will need to eat more and then I move on with my life. So when we say that spiritual life means to discover yourself, you need to know who we are. And knowing who we are is not just knowing we are the souls. That's most important. But that I am a soul, at the same time I am a soul in a particular kind of body. I am a soul in a particular kind of mind. And we may say the mind is the enemy, but then the mind is what I have to live with. I cannot kill the mind, I cannot get rid of the mind. This is the mind I have. It's like sometimes some parents, they may have a child who is very naughty. Okay, you can try to discipline the child, but if the child is by nature very restless, that's how the child is. The parents have to learn to live with that child and try to make the best with that child. So Krishna uses the word chanchala for describing the mind. Mind is restless. Chanchal is also adjective used to describe children. So the mind is like a child, and we have that mind with us. So we want it to grow, but the mind is what it is. And we need to know that we can't just change it overnight. The body is what it is. We can't change it overnight. So knowing ourselves means knowing who we are, but also means knowing what are the tools I have with me. So when we say know yourself at a spiritual level, means that okay, I'm a soul and I'm meant to attain Krishna's abode. It's like say I understand that. Okay, so suppose say somebody is kidnapped and a person runs away, but after they find out, okay, now or they are drugged and they are kidnapped, they come out of their drug haze. Hey, where am I now? Which place is this? Where am I to go back? Now after that, so that first level of understanding is okay, this is where I have to go back now. This is where I am here, this is where I have to go back. But after that, okay, how am I to go back? Do I have enough money to go by a plane? Or should I go by a car? Or should I go by a bus? Or do I have to hitchhike? That will depend on how much money I have. So like that, we could say that we all have a particular kind of body and mind. So at one level, know yourself means to know that I am a soul and the soul has to connect with Krishna. But at another level, what are the tools that I have to connect with Krishna? That is very important to know. And then I have to connect with Krishna according to the tools that I have. So some people, Varnashram, nowadays there is a lot of talk in our movement about establishing Varnashram. The essence of Varnashram is not simply dividing society into 4 Varnas. The essence of Varnashram is to help people live their material life in a way that is harmonious with their spiritual life. So material life means we have to pursue material needs, we have to gain material necessities. But we do that in a way that is spiritually harmonious. So the expertise of Varnashram